What I'm going to do is go ahead and kind of kick this thing off and introduce everybody and talk about the typical rules of the game. First of all, let me thank our panelists for joining us. The title of this one is The Race for Homes Under Management. What's the real prize? Um, and joining us, I have Greg Martin, who's the president of ERA Sunrise. Kelvin, can you say your last name?
Gaming.
Okay, that.
There we go.
Who's the Loan Depot, works for Loan Depot as an area manager. Mark Johnson's the CEO of Homekeeper. And stepping in for Tommy Flood on behalf of FORE, the Future of Real Estate, is Jeff Hickey, who's, I believe, the Chief Growth Officer, if I'm not mistaken, or strategy. There you go. And so jury duty is what people need to do what they need to do. So rules of the game for the masterclass are that we try not to make this an infomercial. We try and have an interesting conversation. It's not always an hour. This one might be a little shorter. We go for as long as the conversation takes us. The goal is to really just to talk about the things that are happening in the industry, the stuff that we would discuss if we were at a conference sitting at the bar. I think this topic is very interesting, but I fear we might be a little ahead of the industry and understanding its significance. And we talked about that a little bit on the prep call. And I fear there was perhaps a little misunderstanding on the title, which I take full responsibility of. But let's talk about, but I wouldn't be surprised if this one catches fire later, because this is a huge topic for the industry. And perhaps we coined homes under management prematurely, but let's talk about what we're even talking about with homes under management. So I'm going to tell you where my head was, and then we'll go around and kind of talk about it for a second. And I even had to do a little internal video for my marketing people on this. When I was talking about homes under management, the industry has not yet coined a universal term for homes that are not for sale. Okay. So we are talking about homes that the one I'm sitting in, and maybe any of you, I'm not buying, I'm not selling, but I own this home. It is under my management. Part of the problem, I think, probably a little bit of the term of home under management after leading a real week was that it sort of intimated that it's property management, and that was not the goal. But what we are talking about with homes under management, again, I think I'll throw it to each of you as perhaps give me better terms, but there's no question in my mind, there is not a universally accepted term. They used to call it off market, but we don't call it off market anymore because that intimates pocket listings, right? So that used to be the term. We don't say that anymore. So that's a whole nother masterclass. So I think I will throw it to Greg, just because you're the way you're situated in my view for the term homes under management. What's a better term, and how do you think about it, and especially as a broker?
Well, first, Audrey, thanks for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to talk on this topic because it's really something that's very important to me as a real estate broker, and I'm finding an increased desire for agents to participate in being a part of this new movement, if you will. Interestingly enough, I used to do a radio talk show called House Talk, getting the most out of your real estate ownership experience. And so when we talk about homes under management, I really think of it as how to get or allow for a homeowner to get the most out of their real estate ownership experience. I think somebody makes an investment in a property and then they live there and enjoy the benefits of that. But there's so much more that they need in order to make it a smooth and seamless experience. And so my broader definition would be, how do we help a homeowner or consumer enjoy that real property more now that they've signed the documents and they're making their mortgage payment?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I know that some of our panelists are really going after this and have, new initiatives on it. So, Jeff, what is your thought? Like, you and I probably have been talking about this the longest, and thank you again for coming on in lieu of Tommy. But when you and I first started talking about this, where was your head? Like again, when we were trying to coin new terms for this?
Yeah, and I'm still wrestling with the term, because it has so many different facets to it. This whole this idea, You know, we have the broker agent perspective on it. Then there's a true consumer element to this. We have then the maintenance and supplies and you know, servicers of this process. And I think we've also got, you know, in the context of where I spend a lot of my time is in the future around all of this, you know, which is going to really requiring, and one of the challenges we have is changing people's mindset as to what this means, moving from a transactional mindset to a long-term engagement mindset. Is something that is really challenging in many cases as we talk to this. So yeah, I don't have an answer to it other than it's something I'm continuing to evaluate. I'm really trying to look at something that is very consumer friendly and consumer engaging, because I think that is the piece that's missing a lot when we start talking about this. And so many of us fall back into, you know, the transaction mindset around servicing our you know, our clients and their homes. But yeah, it's an exciting topic. I do appreciate you including me on it, and I'm looking forward to continuing this discussion.
Okay, no problem. And Mark, thoughts for you as the CEO of Homekeeper and somebody whose livelihood is going to depend on this definition of it being understood. Just to put you on the spot there just a little. I think if we don't understand sort of how to talk about this, you're probably a little bit in trouble. Is that a fair statement? And how are you addressing it?
Great statement. Yeah, thanks for having me as well, Audrey. You know, it's interesting coming in as a vendor to the industry and supporting people like, you know, Greg and Kelvin and Jeff and them. We almost look at it like, you know, people have been trying to create customers for life. I know we're going to get into that in a little bit as well, but homes under management is a solution to creating customers for life.
Right.
Right. So if that's what we're trying to do, then we believe the homes under management, households under management becomes probably the most valuable solution we can to get that consumer engaged during the entire life cycle of their home ownership. And the part that's missing is when they're not transacting, people have neglected that in the past, right? So sending out emails with birthdays and, you know, meatloaf recipes and things like that to try to stay engaged with them hasn't really been effective. So this homes under management piece, keeping them engaged during that entire time is really what we need to be focusing on. And that gets more transactions, which ultimately is what the agents want, the brokers want, and it's a win-win for everybody.
So that's what we're going to dig into, and I'll get to Kelvin in a second. But just so everybody's clear who's attending and for anybody watching later, this is really about simply an address and a property and engaging with not just agents, but consumers, both simply as a homeowner, potentially as a buyer and seller, and then long after that transaction as a person who's moving and setting up services. And again, if you think about the full circle life cycle, coming back around to just being a homeowner, and having a home under management. Okay. And again, we're stepping on property management toes here. Kelvin, does that feel like the right definition for you? Or, I mean, you're in mortgage, so you have and I did 10 years in mortgage. So you have a really unique viewpoint on it. And one thing, by the way, about this webinar, I'm really pleased is we have a broker. We have two companies that are kind of going after this for their livelihood. And we have mortgage, which plays a big role. I didn't get a chance to have title and insurance, but they will. We could really have had a whole slew of quote unquote vendors on. Sorry, Kelvin, but what's your thought?
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, this whole concept really makes so much sense. There's no way in our industry that we've done a good job of staying sticky to the consumer. And I think the only way, because our motivation is what? It's to get referred to someone else from our past clients. That's our best and most valuable asset, but we don't do a great job of developing and engaging in, we're just way too transactional.
Yeah.
We have the transaction, we move on. And this is the first time that I've seen it doing this for 22 years, that this is a way that we can stay engaged with our clients better and more like authentic. Like this is real, right? We're actually trying to bring value while you live in your home versus, as Mark referenced, the meatloaf recipe, right? We're trying to do things that are going to help them stay and maximize their experience inside that home. By doing that, we stay sticky. By doing that, we stay top of mind. And by doing that, we can ask, we've given ourselves the ability to ask for the referral to someone else. So I just
Yeah.
think this is I love the homes under management, but yeah, I think I agree. No one gets it yet, but we're going to get them. We're going to get them to get it because it's
I know, it's new,
really
it's funny.
important concept.
I was at Leading a RE all last week,
Yeah.
and I was like, what am I missing with this? I think maybe people aren't understanding. And I went to a lot of the leadership of the industry. I'm pretty well connected. And first of all, it suddenly, of course, hit me that homes under management probably inferred property management. And I learned that a lot of brokers do property management. So that was a new one for me. And I'm not sure I realized the depth and breadth of that. But everybody, one large CMO of a very large brokerage was like, yeah, it's a race. The race is on. I'm like, I know that's the title of the webinar. And so thank you for that. I love the comment about stickiness. One other point I want to make is this isn't just about selling your service, right, Kelvin?
Right.
This
Right.
is just about teeing up vendors to get their
Mhm.
slice of the pie.
Right.
I mean, that is a huge misperception, in my humble opinion. So I will.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Kelvin.
just one thing on that. I mean,
Yeah, please.
there's doing the right thing by your client, right? Doing the right thing, but then
Nice.
there's a step further that Mark probably can get into, and Greg and Jeff that can get into it deeper. But there's a whole vendor network that we can create that can be a revenue generating deal for the brokerage, for the mortgage. But that's not primary. Primary is how do we bring value? Because bringing value gets you referred.
Yeah,
And
Calvin, I can jump right in on that one.
Yep.
As a real estate broker, and also, Audrey, I didn't mention this, but I also am a joint venture owner in a title insurance company.
Oh, that's right.
So I can talk about anything comes
Great.
up today about title.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, to Kelvin's point, as a broker, our margins continue to get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed.
Exactly.
There's downward pressure on real estate commissions. There is an increased sort of fight from the independent contractor real estate agent for an increasing percent of the commission as numbers are squeezed. So as a real estate broker, there are two things that we really feel are our long-term success quotient. One is to ensure that we don't, just like the agent, we don't lose a client with whom we've done business in the past. They had a great relationship with their agent. Heaven forbid they forgot the agent. They certainly forgot the brokerage firm if we don't find a way to create that connection. And the second piece, as Kelvin just mentioned, is brokers today will survive long term if in that relationship we can monetize some other pieces. And that vendor network is huge.
And
The consumer needs a plumber. The consumer needs an electrician. The consumer needs insurance. If we can be sort of the conduit to broker those relationships and build a vendor network through a homeownership portal where we're connected to the homeowner, they get a chance to shop for these services, but then the broker has the ability to maybe monetize by teeing that up for these service providers. It's a symbiotic relationship where everybody wins.
right. And just to be clear here, pages on broker websites or portals referring vendors have been around for a long time. This is not that.
That's right.
Okay.
We tried it. That doesn't work.
Yes.
The bottom line is if the consumer's connected to something where they already have benefit,
right,
they're looking at the value of their house.
And
they're seeing how much their mortgage is being paid down. They're on this portal. They're saving the relevant documents for their property, and they go on there to download that to give to their accountant or to save the paint color for their dining room. If we can find a way that they're always there, and then they need a plumber or they need an insurance quote, it's that kind of portal that we're talking about that literally changes the space.
And furthermore, and then I'm going to go to Jeff and Mark. Furthermore, this is also not a portal where it's about everybody taking their slice. Again, this is not necessarily about Greg referring Kelvin and there's back payments per se between the vendors. This is not the point of this. Okay. I just really want to be super clear because I do think that is the misperception of this whole entity. It's not to say we're not allowed to make money, but at the end of the day, if we're not truly serving the agent or the consumer in a long-term way per the squeeze, even if it's motivated by the squeeze and the stickiness, then we really are just going to keep failing and we're just going to keep doing the same thing. It's not working. So on that note, I'm going to turn it to Jeff. I do want Jeff and Mark to talk a little bit about what they're doing. not to shill for them, as you know, if you join my classes, but to understand at least a couple of the paradigms that are being built and put out there. They certainly have competition. And we can get into what Zillow and Compass and Realtor.com are doing as well. But go ahead, Jeff, I'll let you go
Yeah,
first.
no, this is exciting because there are a lot of initiatives going on in this space, and I'm excited to hear this conversation talk a lot about the longer term, the bigger picture, and the mindset associated with this, because that I believe is crucial. I've been down the road with clients and other brokerages looking at how to monetize a vendor list. And that just seems like a fool's errand anymore, because it just
Absolutely.
it's a very difficult thing to maintain. It sounds easy, it sounds practical,
Right.
but I have not yet met anybody that is able to do it at any scale.
Yeah.
Especially when we're working with independent contractors as agents, it makes the dynamic of our industry really makes that concept of that.
Well, and it's why
Very
RESPA
appreciable.
came into play. I
Right,
mean, to
right.
really
It
put a
gets to
stop
be
to
a
that.
hassle.
So
So
what
you
is,
come at it
so what is FORE
from a,
doing?
I'm sorry?
What is FORE doing?
Yeah, so FORE, we're focused on it's an outshoot of a couple different brokerages that have come together to create a community of brokerages that are really looking at, we want to basically at our core, we want to drive the future of real estate instead of having it dictated on us from outside sources. So we're working with actual brokers and owners to come together to help set the stage for what the future of real estate really looks like. We want to be in the lead of that versus having the Zillows of the world and others with outside resources coming in and telling us this is the way you should do it. So in that context, we're looking both from the agent perspective and from the broker perspective on what solutions really need to be versus point activities versus transactional type of situation. So we've done a lot of piloting. We've worked with Mark and his team. We've worked with other suppliers and people in this space to identify some best practices, to evaluate what works, what doesn't work, and start to develop our own policy on it and some best practices in this space. And so some of those key areas that we're arriving on in our analysis and our research is really about the long-term picture. But we're looking at some data points also, and we realize that there's some common analysis that people subscribe to, and they're proven out, such as consumers today you generally buy and sell 3 to 5 homes in their lifetime. And so if you look at that as one stream of information, and then you look at your database as another stream of that information, you say that about a third of your database is going to flip over every year. You couple those two things and you can begin to monetize the lifetime relationship with an individual. And when you look at it that way, you can begin to look at an asset. And the logic of this thinking really came out of some M&A work that we did to look at help brokerages begin to value their portfolio.
All right, so your perspective is a little more geared towards the brokerage, looking at the life of the client, and building out, because I know you have a relationship, I think it's okay to say, with like Final Offer. We also play with Final Offer. Final Offer, we've had them on before. They're sort of an online platform that gets people in pretty early, but facilitates the offers, an online sort of offer management system and a bunch of other things. Again, with the goal of keeping them in that portal long after the transaction is closed. All right, I'm
Yeah, I
going
think
to
if I may, just real quick on it, even all these other points, all these solutions are geared towards building the relationship long term with the consumer. So it's making the experience for the consumer desirable, and the agent being at the center of that, so they come back to those individual solutions because that's who they got them from the last time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's important.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's noted. And again, I think you're coming at it from a broker standpoint with a conglomerate of brokers, so that's interesting. Part of what I want to talk about a little bit in this class is the difference of the different roles different parts of the industry play. So Mark, you are not coming at it, quote unquote, at the broker level. I think you're much more geared towards the consumer. So can you talk about, and again, this is important part of this discussion, is how each player in this race is attacking it differently, and then what are the ramifications of that for the consumer? So
Yeah.
go ahead, Mark, what do you think?
Well, it's funny. We actually have, I would say, 3 to 4 clients on that we're kind of chasing after and trying to help bring value to. One of them is the agent. How do we help the agent? The agent wants to get more transactions, so we're helping them get more transactions, both with some AI that helps them create likely mover scores, who's likely to be moving in the near future, but also that homeownership dashboard, which is exactly what we're talking about, and creating a platform and a place where somebody can centralize every aspect of their home. Then we help the brokers, and brokers, we help them by creating ancillary core service monetization points, right? A lot of them have mortgage and title, right? They might have insurance. They have some of these things. HomeKeeper allows them to go in and help them bring that into those ecosystems of contacts. So we're both generating new business and we're helping them create some revenue streams from those ancillary core services, right? And making themselves more diverse. We obviously help the mortgage lender the same way, and the mortgage lender in many cases is trying to bring value to the agent. So we partner with a lot of mortgage lenders to help them bring HomeKeeper in and do the exact same thing that the agent should be doing. So instead of talking about a HomeKeeper, I think what you really wanted me to talk about was who are we trying to go after, right? We're bringing value to the customer, but how does that help the agents? How does it help the brokerages? How does it help the mortgage lenders? That's our entire focus, is bringing actual value that's impactful, that gives people a reason to go in on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis and keep them front and center. So they're way more likely to get more transactions. That's what this is all about, right?
That really is. That's the core of this. At the end of the day, we're really talking about let's face it, what Zillow did to the industry 20 years ago and change and turn on its head, which was to go after the consumer and say, the rest of the industry is going to have to play along, but we're going to serve the consumer first. They were really the first to do it. I'm just old enough to have been there as it was happening. And they started with the Zestimate. And if you think about it, the Zestimate was not good for the industry technically at the time. We've all adapted to it now. But the Zestimate served the consumer, it did. And they believe that if you serve the consumer first, then you will ultimately serve the rest of the industry. And then, of course, they've developed a bunch of services. Question for all of you: where do those services begin and where do they end? Okay, I'm a homeowner. I might be just even shopping and looking at the value of my house. I'm not intending to move, but who knows, right? First, I'm being courted to claim my home, whether it's Realtor or Zillow or any of the other portals. And I have claimed my home. And actually, I did find it useful and interesting. So I think they're doing a good job with that. But at what point does it move outside of real estate? What counts as a real estate service and what does not? Does the paint color really count as a real estate service? To somebody said, saving the paint color. Do I need you to store my will and testament or not? I mean, is the scope of this thing going to get unwieldy? And at what point does it get a little funky? So I think I would pose that to Kelvin first. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what do you mean by unwieldy? Tell me that.
Are we getting out of our comfort area, trying to do too much? Getting into stuff that has legal and regulatory questions. Do we need to stay in our wheelhouse? In other words, hey, Audrey, I want you as a customer for life as a homeowner, sure, because there's things I can do for you, like maybe refinance.
Mm-hmm.
But generically, I'm not going to talk to you about whether or not you should replace that stove because I don't do appliances.
Right.
It's a question.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, I don't think we need to be engaged in all that. But I think if you had a tool that made it convenient for people to have a place where they stored that, God bless them. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And if we can provide that to them, I don't care about what they store there. Mark and I go back and forth on this all the time, right? I don't care what they store there, but I care that they have access to it. And now it's a value add that I bring. When you're talking about consumer first, I'm listening to you though, and I'm going, who's my consumer? My consumer is to be honest, my consumer a lot of times is a real estate profession. So I'm trying to bring home care. I'm trying to bring these tools to the real estate community in the Twin Cities or wherever, Greg and Jeff are. I'm happy to be there as well. But wherever, I'm trying to bring value to them by saying, hey, let's let's do a better job of bringing value to your database so we don't lose transactions going forward. And then with the AI stuff that Mark does on the back end, now I also know who's most likely to move in their database, and I'm bringing value. I'm saying, hey, these people are looking to make a move potentially. Let's make sure we're reaching out and having that relationship. And I just think there's no better mechanism to do this. And if they put the paint color in there, Audrey, I don't care.
Yeah. So, but
Mark cares. I don't care.
But you made a great point. Who's the consumer? This is the problem with this race. Who is the core consumer? Of course, your consumer is somebody who's going to transact financially, period. You know what I mean? This is
Can I jump in?
Yeah, this is the crux of the problem.
It's interesting is the more they're engaged with whatever platform they're using. Okay?
Right.
I don't care what the more they're engaged, the more likely they are to be using in the future. So for us, the more data that they put in, the more they use it to do things like, appliances or repairs and whatever that nature is, the more they engage with you as a platform or you as we have a trusted home advisor. So on behalf of people that are on this call, we would become the home advisor to their clients, right?
Not the only one, concierge and home advisors.
100%. People are doing it. You have to.
Everybody's doing it. Yeah.
It isn't just the digital platform. You got to connect with the consumer, right? And that's a big part of it. So.
Yeah, like
our experience so far. Yeah, our experience so far is, a lot of times from a homeowner perspective, the one thing that always crops up or we hear feedback on is the fact that they're constantly being updated on the relevant value of their property. They see their equity grow. When they're there, if they happen to, there's a way for me to check my Samsung refrigerator owner's manual, I think they accidentally trip over some of the other value of these kinds of tools. But number one, just like getting my investment statement from Edward Jones every month or quarter, I think the value is the thing that captures the homeowner. From the agent's perspective, although there's a variety of ways they can use it, is things like the algorithms written relative to mover score. And I can tell you right now, we've got agents who have the best of intention. They say they're staying in touch with their consumer.
Yeah, right.
They're not. And one of the reasons that agents we've got agents on these platforms that I'm paying for now. And I say, I think we're going to cut it off. This is expensive. Oh, no, don't turn it off. They won't admit to anybody that the only reason that they knew to call the consumer and found out that they were selling was using a tool like this. They're embarrassed to admit that they should have been calling anyway. So what they tell me, Audrey, is to say, well, they would have probably called me next week when they were getting ready to talk about selling their home anyway. But this just sort of precipitated a phone call because I saw their mover score. The reality is tools like this literally are game changers for agents because they don't do what they should be doing.
But again, you went right to agents, not really consumers. So what I'm seeing in the industry is objective. We serve consumers and agents and brokers and MLSs.
Right.
We serve it all. So forgive me, God love local logic. We're pretty agnostic. There's value to our service no matter what for this. And that, yes, that's a plug, but it also happens to be true. So we play, for instance, with a company called, I thought you'd like that, Kelly. We play with a company, for instance, like IGO, Inspection Go. And every inspection that goes out also includes like a copy of our reports, which is very interesting. I'll be honest, when they first wanted to do this, I was like, okay, are the AAs going to be okay? Like huge adoption. And they have a portal and they might bring people into the portal at point of inspection, which now that would be a question of, is that too late? Or is that just exactly the right time for moving forward? So here's my thought. We've talked about this, Jeff. Let's say to me, in my mind, you have three places to capture me as a consumer, which then of course provides value to the agent. So let's take the agent out of it for just 1 second, which is number one, you can get me when I'm just have a homes under management. And to your point, I thought that was great, Greg, where all the looky-loos in open houses, we all know, again, we harken back to the Zestimate, and I'm just tracking the value of my home. I do think Zillow and Realtor, especially Realtor, have done an amazing job with it. Like you can go and claim your home, see what your Airbnb is. That, I'm not going to lie, that fascinated me for my property. Thought that was super sticky. So
Mhm.
you have me as a consumer, not really ready by itself. Then you have me, and Jeff, we've talked about this. I'm going to an open house, right? So I'm trying to get you, like, Final Offers working on this pretty aggressively of how to bring people in early. Mark, I know you have, and there are some others. And then you have maybe what like IGO's doing and some others of getting people where they're really getting them into a portal that says, look, we know you've signed, you've done all this stuff, and you maybe have been in this portal, like you're in portals maybe three different ways, right? What point is that confusing for agents and for consumers? And at what point is it not necessarily a customer for life, but rather a chaos for the customer? And how do we solve for that? Because I know, look, we're in business. I know I have to solve for agents, brokers, MLSs, and portals and proptech. You're all my customers. But how do we make sure that we're not just saying we're trying to get a client for life, but making it easier and meaningful to them? And how do we, and do, are we just all going to have to play together? That's a long answer. Who wants to go first, Jeff?
Yeah, yeah, if I may, because it's something I think I spend a lot of time on.
I
And
know this is a topic I'm starting to feel very passionately about.
yeah, no, it is because I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but we've all got to start broadening our perspective and we're
Great.
really coming at it instead of saying that we're in it for the consumer. We've got to really put our put our the shoes of the consumer on, and we've got to understand that and begin to see this really get away from this transactional mindset.
I think so.
If we can't do that, and we're still going, closing to closing to closing, it's going to be almost impossible to get in front of the consumer and take advantage of it. Everything in the consumer's perspective is going to continue to be commoditized, and that's going to disintermediate the agents, and it's just not, it's going to go everywhere everybody's afraid it's going to go. What we're talking about here actually lays the groundwork and gives us a solid framework for being able to, to break away from that and begin to, work with the consumer. Real quick on it, if we can help the consumer, for example, to see this as a valuable tool and not just a place to store documents.
Mhm.
I agree.
It's a small shift in thinking,
There's a lot of
Mhm.
places for that
but it's
now.
a significant shift in thinking, because
Yeah.
if I know that I can go somewhere, you were joking about paint colors. 3 years from now, I want to repaint something, and I know I can go somewhere and find out what that paint color was. That's so much more valuable to me than figuring out what I paid for that paint. And so if we
And
get away
maybe
from
you'll
the,
pay for that portal at the end of the day. Maybe you'll pay $5 a
well,
month. Maybe it won't be
honestly,
about selling ancillary services. You'll just pay for it.
well, honestly, I believe that there's opportunity for that at some point.
I
So
do too.
just like most, SaaS products out there today that have free products and then upgrades and subscription models, you begin to bring value defined as the consumer, not necessarily value as defined by the agent and broker. You begin to change the dynamics associated with how these models work.
Yeah, it's like a streaming service where you stop paying for the ads because they have to pay for the service and you're more willing to pay for the
I've
service.
just done that 3 times in the last month, and it's like,
Yeah, there you go. And so have I.
Yeah.
So Mark, what do you think? Like, we'll go backwards, forwards here. What do you think? Like, how will you have to play with other services? Will you be open to that, or do you going to try and be everything to everybody? And I mean,
Hmm.
what's your thinking?
Yeah,
Because
no,
you're in the thick of it. I don't know. Fair enough.
no, for sure. No, we
That's an
we
honest
do.
answer, and I appreciate it.
We would for sure. I mean, there is a lot of great technologies out there. There's a
It
lot of
can be.
room in this space. We don't, I mean, having the place to kind of centralize it becomes very important to us, but utilizing other useful technologies and things that help bring value to what it is we're trying to do all together creates a stronger team. I think a big part of it is people have trusted professionals in a lot of areas of their life, things that are important to them, their finances, right? In banking,
Yeah.
your pharmacist is a super trusted source for your medications. That's a private thing in your doctor. And I think the home advisor piece is important, not only to have a platform to centralize it, but getting an engagement and making sure you're getting on the phone with those customers at least once a year and finding out what sort of questions they have. If they're a first-time home buyer, they have no idea what sort of maintenance is required on their home. And understanding those little things to help them actually bring some value to the agent partners. Like we're going we have direct to consumer, but everything's done from our standpoint, just on behalf of our partners, which are the agents and lenders and the brokerages. Honestly, everything is geared towards trying to bring it back to them to help them do what it is they want to do, which is to do more real estate transactions.
Yeah. All right. So I have two, and I know we probably won't go the full time here. By the way, let me say to the audience, if you have any questions, please throw them in. And I'll try and I'll get to them. Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, which is how is this? Because I know you can handle it. You'll refer, you'll grab a bottle of wine later if you need it. But how do you think this is any different than transaction management? I have a long background and a heavy background in transaction management, which, let's face it, to some degree has not stuck.
Right.
I started in TM at like 2003 with the title companies, and it has not stuck as a mainstay way of doing business.
No, it hasn't. And
how do we make
recently,
sure that
yeah,
this doesn't fall by that, but doesn't go that road?
And that's the danger. I share that concern because,
Yeah.
for example, just sold one of our 6 offices, and they're on a totally different transaction management platform, and everybody's got to shift.
Yeah.
And I think that there is the danger that with this kind of model, unless it's built for a plug and play, where it becomes sort of there's a sticky hook at the center, and everything else the consumer might want to attach to that as an ability to interface, I think it does run the risk of extinction. As I heard the discussion, Jeff talking in particular, how does the consumer sort through all the noise to say this is the one that really works for me? And like Mark said, I don't think there is a simple answer.
No,
I
look,
do think that back to when you look at and don't want to kind of necessarily talk about it competing products, but we've experimented with different things over time, and the open rate when a consumer gets a message that says click here to find out what the current value of her home is, because that's such a big part of their overall life and financial portfolio, the open rates are incredibly high. So I think whatever happens, if we keep that at the focus and then find out from the consumer, what is it a homeowner struggles with today? Is it connecting the utilities or shopping online to get a better internet service? What is it that the consumer wants? And are these portals in a position to survey the consumer and find out from homeowners what is it that would make their platform more universally acceptable? And I don't know that anybody's actually reached out to try to get that data yet.
I know that those services do. I talked to a company, names remain nameless. They do extraordinarily well. And they all, forgive me, Mark, it's wonderful to have I think the truth is the Homekeeper's doing the right thing, which is to have a person. I think that is becoming the new standard, which is to have somebody walk you through, whether it's changing over your utilities or advising you on your mortgage and title as objectively as possible. Kelvin, I'll probably finish up a little early today, but I do want to leave you with the last question. We'll give everybody 15 minutes before the next meeting, which is that you get to be the mortgage guy. You get the regulatory question. And you're an area manager, so I think you should be able to handle it. But how do we deal with privacy of data? At what point do we start to muddy the waters with their data? Like if you're storing their documents and you're storing their title or their, you know what I mean? Like, and you know where I'm going with this. I'm not even sure I can articulate it. I know what you know.
Yeah, I mean, your concern is that there's going to be a privacy breach at some point inside one of these systems,
or that these companies starting are not equipped to handle privacy regulations, as mortgage, insurance, and title are very equipped.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, it's one of the things I think Mark and others in that space have to be very aware of and have a privacy policy on the front end to make sure people understand that the data is safe there. I think we kind of push people to these different platforms, assuming they're safe, and so it's a good question. I think it's we're at Loan Depot. We went through a breach earlier in the year, shut us down for about 7 to 8 business days. That's a huge deal, right?
That's a long time.
So, so I think it's got to be at the forefront of people's minds. But I think putting the right things in place, I'm not terribly concerned long term that it'll be a problem, but
as we're at the beginning of this, you're right though. But as we're Mark is at the forefront of it. Jeff is working through it as a new entity. I think, I know some of the companies that are out there, I think, are not ahead of it, but trying to think through that. I do want to leave us all with the fact that this is an interesting webinar, and I'll sort of tie it up, which is that, again, I think this is a very prescient webinar. I think we are at the beginning of this. I know that the big portals are going after it very aggressively as well. I think it is a question of, are we serving the consumer or the agent or the brokerage ultimately? And how do you do that all together at once? I know poor Mark has to deal with this, and I know that Jeff spends a lot of time thinking about this, and so does some of the others. I know there are other companies out there like homeowner.ai that are trying to think this through. So it's like, how do we make sure that we, number one, are providing people value first and foremost? Number two, that we're not making it more complicated for them. Number three, that we're protecting their data, right? And number four, that maybe ultimately we'll have to play a little bit together to make sure that, I know FORE has that in mind, Jeff, about making sure that we're fully integrated and that it does serve the consumer at the end of the day. But I appreciate you all joining us. I think this will become a very hot topic as the market squeezes. Greg said it on our prep call. As there's less inventory and we have to shift our mindset from being transactional to maybe a little more service oriented, is perhaps a good way to put it, right? That we will have to serve the consumer to the best of our ability.
And it's
So,
that homeowner that's actually going to make that determination at the end of the day.
oh, and don't they always? It doesn't the consumer always at the end of the day. Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it. We'll send everybody a recording and everybody who couldn't join. So thank you all. Okay.
Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Happy
Good to
Tuesday.
see you.
See you later.